screen and cleared in. They were taken down the elevator to level 2.
Walk in, all the bays are over here. This is a very vast complex.
Big place, huh?
Big place. The elevators are right here. There's 4 elevators. 3 and 4 are extremely security. There are no sentries down at 3 or 4. And the levels of 3 and 4, I don't know what goes on down there. I heard something about an Abbey or EB down there. I'm not too familiar with what it is, but as you get off the elevators, you get off, and this is level 2. You walk in, the bays are over here. They're all separated by like an automatic doors that open and close each bay. Walk down, there's 5 on each side. There's a hallway right there, and each of these bays have elevators. It'll bring them all the way to the top. It'll bring the whole floor all the way up with a hydraulic system. Now, as you walk down, there's a lot of machinery right here, which I have no recollection of what it does. I believe I've never been in that area. My job was to be a sentry for these 3 gates and up above in the level complex, and sometimes I would be walking down here escorting people. This is all machinery right here. This, I believe, is a computer. I believe it's like something that's preserving whatever, these gray humanoid people in here. This right here is shelving in a desk area. It's occupied with TV. There's a back hallway right here. I've never been back there. There's 4 snipers on duty at all times. I don't know. They have their own sleeping quarters.
This is a further sketch of facilities, living facilities in level 2.
This is the quarters area at level 2, where the sentries lived for 28 days of the month and only came out the last 2 or 3 on rest and recuperation leave, and somebody else replaced them. Their food was catered in. They didn't come out. Their laboratory was there. They slept there. They ate there. And in the whole area where they lived and operated and worked, there were audio detectors and video detectors, watching them to be sure that they were not communicating with each other, except in front of the television set and at the dining table, talking about television programs or the food they were eating. And they didn't like this. This was too much for them, and that's why they wanted to get out. You say the security levels 1 and 2 have sentries, guards.
Guards.
But there's no guards below level 2. How?
Sentries aren't allowed down in guard. We guarded the elevators for 3 and 4. You have to have 3 keys, a thumbprint, and a retina print to get in.
3 keys?
3 keys.
3 keys, a thumbprint, and a retina.
And a retina print, which is like a
You look at a
camcorder. Like you look in, and they stick their right eye up to it and their left thumb at the same time.
At the same time?
After they turn the keys, they stick the keys in, which is on a row, 2 inches below. And then they look. The doors will open. They get in, and I don't know where they go. I assume that there's 2 more levels below too. I could not be for sure, but I know there's 3 and 4. I don't know because there's 3 and 4 elevator.
They don't use magnetic cards?
No.
Keys are metal keys. It's like a house key.
Yes, just a regular house key. They go in. I heard in level 3 that they had what they call a Abbey or an EB, which Mr. Stevens described it a little bit better, but I don't know what it looks like. I never viewed it.
They said it was dead or alive?
They never said. Nobody never said. I just heard, through gossip talk sometimes you hear, as these guys were coming out of the elevator and stuff like that, you'd be sitting there at your post and they just, go on talking, you could hear what they're saying. about something about ebbing, which is a biological release. Now, when you're in level 2, every once in a while, as I was saying before, that there's some screaming that is a part of a cross of a chimpanzee and I know it's not a chimpanzee. It sounds, I don't know how to really describe it. It's extremely blood-curdling, I guess you would say. It's like
The screaming, how would you describe it again?
it's okay. It's a cross between a chimpanzee and maybe it's kind of ridiculous, but an elephant. I mean, like how an elephant roars, but it's like he's got a vocal cord that's kicking. That's, you know what I mean? It's. I never want to hear it again. I mean.
And you hear that on level 2. And
You hear that on level 2 if you're down there long enough during the day, during working hours, during when the people are down there. But there's always 10 to 12 people down there in level 3 and 4. It seems like they would have a better system of knocking out these games. I don't know if it's just the extremely high octaves of what they are working on or what they're doing.
He gave me his name as Connor O'Ryan, and Connor had begun to take an interest in what was going on in his facility, and he began to look around at the ships and the bodies preserved in the glass cases, glass tanks. He saw 7 disc-shaped craft stored there at level 2, 3 of which were alike, and the remaining 4 were all different. Now, if you remember, Bob Lazar said that there were 9 bays on level 1, and they were directly above the ones at level 2, so it probably was a matching set of bays. All of the vehicles were stored on mobile platforms that could be rolled out on rubber-tired wheels and to a hangar, carrier-type elevator that took them to another level. He saw some of these craft occasionally taken up to level 1, and sometimes one would be taken outside when all satellite activity was clear. The craft were kept on rolling platforms, and they were always moved on these platforms from his level to level 1.
As far as the disc craft and other craft over in S4, are they all captured alien vehicles, or are they also Nazi-engineered vehicles that we took over?
Oh, yeah, those are in another part of S4. When we were out in the desert at the High Point interviewing Connor O'Ryan, we had him sketch the craft that he saw in the 7 bays of the bay facility there, and he said that there were craft in 7 of the bays. The 3 of the craft were identical. All the rest were different.
What was your main focus in doing the interview?
To let him say what he could say as much as we could get from him. I didn't want to be leading him or introducing anything, changing the subjects. I wanted it to be his testimony. This is his sketch on the notebook that we were using at the recording site of the ship in bay number 1. He's doing all the sketching in ball pen in blue ink.
This one is this one's got the legs and all. I mean, I don't know too much about this one. I've only seen this one twice. It has like a hydraulic system in here that keeps it up off the ground. The legs kind of like they got joints in them that move. There's 4 legs on this one. I mean, I believe this is an older recovery. There's no.
Is this a smooth curve up here on the top?
This is a smooth curve, and there's some kind of a white crystalline substance right here.
Crystalline substance.
Crystalline. Looks to me like a diamond, but I mean, It's about 8 inches wide. I don't know what it is or what it's for. I've never seen it activated. This is of a low priority vehicle. This one is mostly covered all the time, and this is in Bay 1. And
So
I
we
think
got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6.
yes. And this is, I mean, this, it's like they don't pay no attention to this one at all. This is mostly covered all the time. I've seen it uncovered once.
What kind of testing is done on the craft besides radiation testing?
Well, I know there was, I mean, there's I guess what you call a metallurgist at the facility that's there all the time. I mean, he was always constantly trying to get some kind of, I mean, they were trying to scrape it, but a couple of them would produce some kind of residue from the scrape. Some of them wouldn't. I mean, as I say, when somebody was there on the ship, we couldn't get a view at all. When they were working on the vehicles, we couldn't. If we turned around and looked, we were reprimanded immediately about it. So it was best not to observe. You just walk back and forth. I mean, you can kind of look out of the corner of your eye, but that's about the best you can see. I mean, they had machines they'd wheel in there, and I just couldn't make it out because everything was so tight. When they were working on it, it was tight. I mean, they didn't trust us. They trusted us to know. I mean, we knew what was there, but it was like to know what's going on. It's a whole different story. It's a need to know, and that's basically all there is to it.
Did you ever overhear any of the scientists discussing any properties of the metals or magnetic fields?
I heard one time about they were trying to figure out how many times that this metal was laid or something. Laid upon each, some kind of a process. They didn't know what kind. I mean, that's about it. They were trying to figure out, and they were talking about how many times it was laid, like 1,000 times it makes it laid to produce this kind of a metal or something. But that's about it. I didn't.
Nothing about conductivity or magnetism?
No.
Never overheard any of that?
No. I mean, I've read books about, geomagnetic propulsion and stuff like that.
Were you guys ever briefed on radiation hazard areas or magnetic, electronic hazard areas?
Yeah, just a little bit though. We were told that the machines themselves were high in radiation, not to touch them. I don't think that was true. I think they just didn't want us near them. I mean, the people that were working around them always had a suit on. They were always dressed up appropriately. On the new one, they were.
Does the first one there look like any other ships that you've seen or photos in your catalog? Or
No. In Bay 2, 3, and 4, there were 3 identical ships just like that. That's his sketch of the Bay 2, 3, and 4.
What's the rectangle you just sketched on the bottom? Is that what they sit on? Or
This is like what they sit on now. I have personally witnessed when they somehow activate this vehicle and a bottom pops out, and then it kind of pops out a little bit and comes to about right, I'd say maybe a foot below the vehicle, and it sits on a cushion of air about 2 inches. When you're near the vehicle, the static electricity is extremely intense. When you put your face up to it, breathe up against it or anything, there's no fogging of any sort at all. And I also found kind of peculiar is there's no dust ever on these, and I don't never seem to see anybody wiping them off. There's no residue of any kind on any of these vehicles, on these 3.
what's this? Is this retractable?
This part right here comes down, it's retractable.
The bottom.
It sits on the ground, and when they activate it, it seems this part pushes it like a hydraulic mechanism, brings it up off the ground to about a foot. And then you don't hear nothing, absolutely no sound, and then it just picks up, and it sits on about 2 inches of air.
This was another attempt to get a better drawing of the craft in Bay 2, 3, and 4 from another angle.
Can you describe the shapes of the openings or the way the doors opened on the craft?
Most of the time they had them turned around so we couldn't view it. But one time I seen let me find the one. On the ones they got 3 identical ones in bay 2, 3, and 4. These right here. Something like this will just open up. Not from a hinge either. It's all pop up. The whole section will just pop up. There's no stairs or nothing. They had a stair system that would go to it. This is just a view that I seen.
The whole thing just popped
Yeah,
out all the way out and they laid it on the floor?
No, it would pop up and just sit there with some kind of a hydraulic. Not anything like we've seen. Not hydraulics, but from a view like this, it would look like this. It would pop up and that would mean. And then it would. I mean, when it came back down, you could barely see a crack. Barely. I mean, it almost looked. If you were looking from 15 feet away, you couldn't see it.
So the door basically just lifted up and
Lifted
out.
up and out. And that's all I've ever seen of anything being open. Most of the time, they'd have them turned around while they were working, while you were walking back and forth. I mean, we weren't privy to no kind of information whatsoever.
So you could never see a glance of any kind of
No,
control
any
panel
kind of
or
control
seats inside.
or monitor, nothing of that sort at all. When there was people in the saucers, we had duty detachment in the hangar area and G level, you know what I mean. We would walk back down the hallway, do an about face, walk back, and just to make sure. I mean, and if somebody sabotaged it, then we'd catch anybody that's coming in or out. There would be 2 people. We'd pass each other in the middle, go down, and keep doing it until they were done. I know they activated, though I've seen them activate one, and that was the ones that all the 3 of them looked identical in bays 2, 3, and 4. I mean, I would assume it was some kind of a reversal of gravity or magnet. I mean,
When you say you saw one or more craft activated,
one craft at a time.
one craft activated, when you knew that it was activated, did you notice anything different about it? Did it seem to come alive in any sense of the word, or was it just as inert as it always was?
It was inert as it always was, with the exception of the bottom of it being kind of blurry, like I explained, the heat coming off of the hood and like it was heated. And the first time they activated it, it knocked out completely the whole top facility in electric.
All the power.
Yeah, then they rigged something up or something, and they did it again, and it didn't, but the static electricity was so intense that even being around the disc, we would oil our hair down. I mean, oil it down with baby oil to keep it, and put baby oil on us to keep our hair from just staying straight up on that at all times when you pass and walk by them. Especially, the others, some of them were nothing. They were just inert, but the ones in 2, 3, and 4, I think they feel that they're still, I don't know if they're flying them or not. I would take a good wild guess and say that they probably were. I don't think they fly them in daylight though. I've seen them activate in daylight, but I've never seen them fly.
Did you ever see any pilots going to the craft or coming from the craft that might indicate?
No, they wheeled out none. The one in Bay 3, which is identical to 2 and 4, they wheeled it out and activated it. I mean, I was still back by Bay 3 walking doing my periodic up and down route, and I seen it. I mean, it just kicked on and we lifted right up off the top about 2 inches. You can see it just sitting above the ground on a cushion of air.
Did you ever see a glow of any kind, a dim glow associated with the activation phase?
No, because when they did activate, it was in the middle. I mean, the sun was out, and
The sun was bright.
the sun was bright. I mean, in Nevada, it's pretty much all bright. There was no cloud. I mean, that you could see. I mean, I was looking out from the building, so the big door there. I was looking at it through the building. As I said to do, turn around and keep coming back. I could never take a peripheral vision of it, except was when I'd be walking back. And we had to turn around. And that was it. it stayed activated for about, I'd say 4 to 5 minutes. The
And
second
shut
time,
it down.
then it would just shut down and then just set right down. As I say, a little black, flat black substance would automatically pop out of the protruding part, and it would just pick right up. I mean, it instantaneously picked right up. There was no noise from what I could hear, unless you got up close, but I wasn't that close. I could see it out there. As I said, I could see the blur of substance. There was the ground around was not, it was all pavement, so I couldn't see if there was any movement or...
No leaves or dirt were blowing.
Yeah, no leaves or dirt or anything like that. I couldn't see a girl or anything like that.
Well,
Or any pilot or anything. I mean, they turn around and wheel it right back in again.
Did you ever get a chance to look into any of the discs at all? Open
No.
doors?
No, we weren't allowed. I just say I'd go up and I went up one time and put my breath on one because I was just touched it and it felt very warm, but we were never allowed anywhere near or to get near the discs when people. I mean, we do what we can, but we never looked inside. I never looked inside. I never had any observation of inside.
Did you ever get to see any of the craft fly?
No. I've seen them sitting on the ground on, like I said, that one sitting on 2 inches of cushion there. I've never seen any of the craft fly. But then again, they could do that on different ships when another sentry was there, and he could observe it, but I didn't. I've heard that they've flown them, but there again, we didn't ask no questions. Yeah, asking questions meant termination of your career immediately.
This is the ship that he saw in Bay 5. It was different from all of the previous ones.
And as he's describing these and drawing them for you, what kind of remarks is he making about these?
He's just describing that this was. He gave me colors too that I don't remember now exactly what it was. As he was sketching, he'd say that this was a kind of a yellowish and this was kind of a copperish.
what's in Bay 5?
Okay, Bay 5 is kind of a unique one. It's got some hieroglyphics on it. Now I know because I've seen this one rotate. I've never seen it leave the ground, but I've seen it rotate. This one is really streamlined. I would say this one's about 7 meters
Diameter,
diameter.
which is about 21 feet.
21 feet. This is this is the smallest disc here. Now this one's got a port bubble. You can't see through it. This is a total polished. In fact, it looks chromed. It looks like somebody is. I mean, it looks chromed.
How about solarized glass? Could it be something that's transparent?
Yes,
See through from one direction.
it's possibly that this. I mean, the whole thing is the same exact, but you can see the different parts.
Oh.
This part right now, this is a rim going around it. Looking from this point of view.
Projects.
Now, this is the outer rim right here that circles the vehicle. I've seen this. I mean, they have managed to do this. This sits flush, right, just like this.
Right on the ground.
Right on the
main
ground.
floor.
I have no idea what kind of propulsion, but they're doing a lot of work. This has been moved to the levels, sub-levels 3 and 4 quite a few times. This has got hieroglyphics on the bottom. Right here.
Where would you show the hieroglyphics?
It's like it's a name tag, like say an identification for a vehicle. Symbols of sort, like United States warships or something. They got their numbers on. The hieroglyphics are. I mean, I never have got a close look. It's something. We have photos of it. We can take a look at the photos.
And then the one in Bay 6 was entirely different. It was flat top and flat bottom.
Okay, then there's a gold anodized vehicle that is. It's never been activated. I've personally never seen it activated. It's flush on the bottom all the way.
Flat.
And it comes up with a square protrusion.
On top.
Now it looks to me like, I've never seen it do it, but it looks to me like this part circles around this part. Rotates around this part. Now underneath here, I've never seen the underneath of this vehicle. It's always sitting on a ramp that is movable. They move around. It's like a lift. A little
It
lift.
just sits right down on the
It
ramp.
sits, and they're not doing a lot of work on this one right now. It's a goldish color all the way, completely.
These are relatively sharp corners. There's
Very extreme.
Not
I mean,
zero.
everything is extremely. It looks like it was machined. I mean,
So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Is there any more bays?
there's 10 bays.
10 bays? What's in 7?
Okay, now Bay 7-1 is one they've just pulled in. I was there when they brought it in about 4 months ago. They pulled it out, which was covered with a lot of sediment and dirt. I was told it was brought from the southwest region. I don't know for sure. I'm not going to say I do. But it was apparently brought from south region, and it was apparently buried deep in sediment, at least 1,000 to 2,000 years old. Now it has a round dome top, and it too has a little protrusion down here of about 6 inches. And this one looks like a smoked, a grayish. It's not shiny. It's smoked. It cleaned up real nice. I mean, but it looks like it hasn't changed its color. I'm not any authority in there. There's no visible writing on this, and there are no visible machine parts that look like they move.
no seams or joints.
There's just a seam right here, but it's like, I mean, no bolts, no nuts, no any kind of interlocking parts that is keeping this vehicle. They're still trying to figure out how to get in this one. I left 6 weeks ago. They haven't yet to figure out without destroying or how to get in it. I've seen it twice. They just don't. It's been down in level 4. It was brought in. We've seen it. I watched them clean it up. Then they sent it down to level 4. They brought it up one more time. Kept it for about 2 days in Bay 7, and then they brought it right back down again. And
Why don't you write the 7 on the corner there so we can remember which bays these were? Was there anything in Bay 8?
no, they're empty.
8, 9, and 10 are all.
8, 9, and 10 are empty. These are all second level. They can be brought to the first level and on up to the top when they want to. Or as I say, I don't know what's in level 3 and 4 or beyond that. But I think all these vehicles have been to another installation sometime or another before they got here, with the exception of the one they brought in from the southwest region that
They dug out of the ground.
that they dug out of the ground. I mean, they were very excited with it being there. I mean, I overheard him saying that it was at least 1,000 to 2,000 years old in rock sediment. The vehicle itself,
That was based on the sediment
in the
that
rock.
it was found in.
Yeah,
Buried.
it was found in. How they found it is beyond. I have no idea. Let's say one of the most outstanding events is the arrival of the 7th disc, the one that was supposedly buried in sediment, which had sediment all over the rock. So the people there were extremely excited, which went against what we talked about before about the place being a museum. You know, I mean, I don't really know, but the facility was in a kind of an uproar. I mean, not an uproar for the good, you know. They were kind of like, the people that were there were very excited to get this disc. I don't know how it was found, how it got there, or any of that information, but I know that they were very excited. They cleaned it off and put it in Hangar 7 and dropped it to level 3, and then they brought it back up about a good 3 months, I mean a good month later, and then it sat up there for a couple of days, and they dropped it again.
And to your knowledge, they were trying to open it up and get it open?
Yes, I observed a couple times them trying to open it up while it was up in the G level.
How are they attempting to open it? What kind of tools are they?
They had like a scanner thing. They were walking around the thing trying to look, and one guy had which is similar like a pick thing, just in the crevices looking for it. I mean, this is when it was rapidly new. I think they brought it down to level 3 for I don't know, a radiation check or what would you say, to make sure quarantine it for the first 30 days to make sure nothing's gonna come getting out of it and causing a mass, biological plague of some sort or anything. That's what I observed hearing talk. I don't know if that's the truth. I heard a thing called Project Ghostwalker referred to it a lot too. I think
people coming and going.
yes, I think they referred Project Ghostwalker to the disc that was picked up, the most recent one found and brought there. I believe that's what they consider Project Ghostwalker.
Did you ever hear any other project names mentioned?
No. I overheard that name mentioned once, and so did one of my colleagues there. Heard it.
We have operational discs that our government has built from back engineering in the projects.
You said that we had craft that were up there on patrol. Tell me what sources you have for this information, and then tell me what craft are being shot at and shot down, and why this scenario is as it is.
Our operational discs, we can keep them secret because they're all operating in a special program. And the people that are in the program are recruited in a recruiting stage. We identify people that have limited family ties, foster parents that they don't maintain contact with, or they're outright orphans, or they've lost their parents or something like that. So they're unmarried, young men that are unmarried, fit, otherwise qualified in every way, but don't have strong outside contact. And they recruit them, they identify them early on when they're processing the incoming cadets to the academy, assigned to the secret Air Force Academy on the other side of the mountain, out there in Colorado Springs. And few of the instructors know anything about the other academy, which has special instructors, special trainings programs, and they train the disc operators and the disc maintenance men. And they're all trained in a special facility. They come out with special grades and special pay scales, and they're assigned to special organizations that are closed organizations. People don't rotate in them. They're assigned there for their career. They don't talk because when they're recruited, they're shown that they're getting better paid than anybody else. They're getting all the perks life can give them. They have their internal recreation. They have their internal facility. Get the best food, the best pay, the best clothes, the best environment, everything the best and top of the line, and they're constantly reminded that they are a special elite force. And to break any of the rules is not only to be kicked out of the force, but probably if you're not allowed to leave the force alive. So it often means a death sentence too. And they know this. And they live that lifetime. It's a career lifetime. In all the other services you rotate on your job. Here in this group you don't rotate. The organization remains the same. There remains the same people in it for an entire career. And when they retire out, they simply move from a high-level active position to a high-level support position in the same facility. Stay there till they die. So the perks are great and the punishments are severe. And there's very little comes out.
Discovery Houston. Houston, while you're looking at Orion, we're getting a pretty tremendous light show. We're looking at the lightning on the Earth.
Yeah, I was looking at that myself, and looks like we're coming up on sunrise.
To orient you, the glowing curved line, unevenly dividing the dark upper right portion of your screen from the larger gray tone portion to the lower left, is the airglow layer of our atmosphere. It begins about 40 miles above the surface of the Earth and dissipates at an altitude of approximately 60 miles. Don't confuse this glowing line with the actual solid horizon of the planet, indicated on the NASA video by the little electronic registration marker at the upper left. This real horizon is slightly darker, opaque, 40 miles below. That's the actual Earth's surface. Remember, the shuttle's flying 355 miles above that surface, about 300 miles in airless space above the airglow. Now pay attention to your screen at the top center. You will see a dot of light appear and begin to move from right to left. Watch carefully. The dot will turn hard right in apparent response to a brief flash from the lower left. 3 seconds later, two contrails move sharply upward from the lower left. In my opinion, the NASA shuttle video you have just seen is among the most extraordinary pieces of footage in television history. Some of you may have seen parts of this extraordinary NASA footage elsewhere. It's made the rounds of several national television shows. It's also become something of a classic among UFO enthusiasts who see the extraordinary physics and automatically assume we're seeing aliens. From NASA, the official explanation of what you've just seen is that it's anything but aliens or high-performance spacecraft. When you see the shuttle video in fast motion, the stunning anomalous movement of these anomalous objects really stands out. When I first saw the shuttle tape, I was overwhelmed. If these are not mere ice flakes or something equally mundane, their existence and their behavior is confirming the fundamentals of our entire hypothesis and 10-year investigation. If we can prove that these objects we are seeing are in the atmosphere, then they have to be at least several hundred miles from the shuttle's camera. To see ice or other debris at that distance, it would have to be bigger than the shuttle itself. The physical horizon of the Earth is the distance reference visible throughout the entire NASA video. The fact that one key glowing object seems to come up over that horizon was to us a vital clue to the possible importance of this fixed reference point in space to solving the entire distance problem from the shuttle. So let's look at our video again in close-up. Pay careful attention to what I call the target object, which now suddenly pops on, then moves smoothly to the left. Its behavior is exactly like something suddenly popping into view by coming over the physical, very opaque horizon of the Earth. Let's take another look at that. If we can prove that that's exactly what we're seeing, then this simple fact, if we can establish that it is a fact, automatically fixes the object's distance in relation to the shuttle as the distance to that horizon, and the airglow 40 miles above it. At the peculiar flash, the dot immediately turns hard right and undergoes extreme acceleration, heading upward on our two-dimensional TV screen across the airglow limb. This limb, which we have just established is some 1,700 miles from the space shuttle, physically marks the boundary between the upper atmosphere and airless space. At the precise moment that our object crosses this bright limb, it dims out as if someone was turning down a light. The glowing object we are seeing is at the physical horizon of the Earth, in the atmosphere, some 1,700 miles from the shuttle's TV camera. If the glowing dot were only debris lit by sunlight, as NASA flatly argues, the object's sudden upward motion must make it brighter because it's flying into growing daylight. Instead, the dot grows dimmer, consistent with a much more distant physical location, because the Earth's horizon, 1,700 miles behind the shuttle, is still in total darkness. NASA's explanation for the flash is that you're seeing a thruster firing aboard the shuttle. If this were true, the thruster firing would change the attitude of the entire shuttle and therefore the direction of the setting stars. Since this does not occur, this cannot be the explanation for what we've been observing. The calculations say that this object had to also be at least as far away from the space shuttle as the airglow, therefore fixing its distance in terms of simple physics as 1,700 miles away. Since we have now established beyond any reasonable doubt this fascinating object's distance from the shuttle, the rest is easy, if slightly unbelievable. Our little dot is in fact drifting along at a leisurely pace of some 15 miles per second. That's about 54,000 miles per hour. We say it's drifting because when you see our little target object react to that peculiar flash that you're quite familiar with by now, the undisputed star of our update accelerates in less than 2 seconds to over 200,000 miles per hour. And for those of you who may be wondering how many G's this little guy experiences when it accelerates in reaction to that flash, its numbers clock out at a cool 14,000 times the Earth's gravitational acceleration. A force of 14,000 G's is roughly equivalent to dropping a 10-story building on top of you. 200,000 miles per hour in less than 2 seconds, 14,000 G's. Obviously, nothing in our space technology can even begin to approach numbers like this and have pilots survive. In fact, nothing in our known laws of physics provides for propulsive performances and capabilities such as those we've just observed. But this is well within, in fact, it is implicit in any hyperdimensional technologies capable of literally altering gravity. We have calculated the actual velocities of these two peculiar streaks of light. They are indeed consistent with a much publicized Star Wars weapon system from the Pentagon called Brilliant Pebbles. Essentially a high-tech shotgun burst of thousands of tiny plastic pellets, accelerated to about 1,000 miles per second by an electromagnetic accelerator called a railgun. If this is true, the flash you're seeing is not light. It's an effect in the camera created by the electromagnetic pulse that accelerates the brilliant pebbles. Quite a weapon, but no match for a vehicle capable of nimbly darting away at over 14,000 G's, as we've seen. The target, you now see why we've been calling our little glowing dot by this peculiar name, in fact evades this shot with ease. This and a host of other actions by all the other anomalous dots present in this sequence, which we haven't time to talk about, has led us to this amazing conclusion, that the shuttle cameras that night somehow showed us an active Star Wars weapon system in Earth orbit, and the system is using our own American hyperdimensional technology.
At the time that I first saw that tape, I didn't know that we had this shaped craft on patrol with beam weapons. I didn't know that. But since then, I've learned that we have them on regular patrol in space. U.S.
military has disc
U.S.
shaped.
military has disc-shaped craft that patrol in orbit, and they do shoot down visitors.
First off, how are they able to go undetected?
Well, we know where they are, and we know that the Russians have some up there too.
Where are they?
They're not in orbit because they move around. They're not confined to orbits. They're on patrol up there.
How many?
I don't know how many are on patrol at a time, but we have 2 squadrons of them that are running these patrols.
Squadron being how many in a squadron?
A squadron of fighter airplanes is 15 airplanes, 15 vehicles.
So
I don't know what a UFO squadron or a disc squadron is, but if it's 10, even 10 vehicles, that's 20 vehicles available. There's probably 2 on patrol all the time.
Are these the result of successful back engineering projects?
Yeah. The discs are not built by one company. The modules are built by different companies, so no one company has the whole vehicle.
And then assembled.
And then assembled by the government out at Lancaster, and then flown to their
Lancaster where?
Lancaster, California.
What base is that associated with?
Edwards Air Force
Edwards.
And then they're flown to their operating facility. I understand there's one out in California near Point Mugu and one under Beale Air Force Base. But the operational discs were built, the ones that are on patrol were built over 10 years ago. And they evolved from the gravity control technology that was developed at Alice Springs out in Australia. And from that we designed operational discs to go on patrol. This was the original Star Wars project that was envisioned by President Reagan. Yeah, the money that was put up for Star Wars was really put up to finish the development of the operational discs, but we let the public think we were spending it on telescopes and other research materials. They're probably doing that too, but the impetus for the Star Wars program was to get patrols in space. I think that operational discs were used the first time on the first Iraq War, when we went in there and pinpointed all the command and control facilities and took them out in one night. We alleged that the F-117s did it, but the F-117s couldn't sit still and target an object and remain on it, hold a laser beam on it. And the F-117s made a noise. There's a lot of reasons why it probably was not an F-117, although that's what we said did it. I think that we used our operational discs that are nearby to go in, and they're invisible and they make no noise and they can sit still in the air, and they just put the beam on the targets, and the missiles came in and homed on the beam. These organizations they have they operate under their own command structure. They don't report up through the Chief of Staff of the Army, the Air Force, Navy, or anybody else. They have their own line, and it probably reports only to the secret government and not anybody else in between. They are on patrol, have been for 10 years. They carry beam weapons. They've solved the gravity control problem. They don't carry a lot of fuel. Gary McKinnon, the computer nerd in London that broke into black projects and got this information. That hasn't been published in the newspapers. We've been very carefully trying to cover up what he might have known, but the underground knows. I think one of the reasons we're trying desperately to get Gary McKinnon in our hands here in this country is to successfully discredit what he has said about the black projects that involve a space carrier fleet. He says that he discovered that we have 3 super space carriers out there, like aircraft carriers, that carry operational discs that have beam weapons. He even found the names of the 3 craft. They're christened with names like battleships. And he found the complement of discs that are aboard and who's managing them and a number of things he claimed in the black project research he was doing. He's trying to deny that he saw this information now. We want to get him here to silence him, because he apparently discovered something that we don't want our public to know. That we do have patrol craft out there of carrier size that carries a number of patrol discs aboard and can launch and recover them anytime and any place they want to. When they return to the surface to be serviced, their operational facilities are entirely underground, just like the deployed squadrons. All he found was names, that they were carrier craft, that they have a live aboard complement, that the names of the commanders are not known because those that enter these programs have their names changed and their families are notified that they were killed in a military accident and can't come back to an identity again.
What's your overall opinion then about us having a UFO fleet? Valid or?
Well, yeah, I think we have. I'm aware of 4 squadrons at least, and there may be more, and a squadron of aircraft, fighter aircraft, consists of 15 airframes. So I would guess that a squadron of discs must be 12 to 15 discs. The crew members are all picked out from the plebes that go into the Air Academy, and there are probably some taken from other academies too that are identified when they clear in as having as being unmarried, have no close relatives, have they're orphans or have foster parents that not making close contact with, not going to be missed. And once they get in the program and experience the perks and the benefits and the dangers of trying to get out of it, they're there forever. It's a career job, and they don't change positions. They remain in the same job until they retire, and they work in it again in civilian status after that.
How did you happen to meet Bill Uhouse?
He came to me one time, a long time ago.
Back about what year?
Oh gosh, about 1990.
1990, and how many years did you keep in contact with him? Or are you still in contact?
I was in contact with him up till a year ago. I haven't heard from him. He may have died now. He was an older man.
What city was he living in?
He was living in Las Vegas the last I knew. He went back, he was from Kansas, and when he retired about 10 years ago, he wanted to go back to Kansas, to where he was raised, his boyhood hometown. And he and his wife began making plans to go back and look at property there. As soon as they made several telephone calls and began firming up their plans, his wife came down with a brain tumor. They took her to the hospital, military hospital, of course, there in the facility at Area 51, where they removed a tumor bigger than a golf ball. And that incapacitated her for a long time. And it took her a couple of years to recover. As soon as she got where she felt reasonably well again, they began the telephone calls once more, and then she comes down with a second brain tumor, fast-growing brain tumor. This time it was bigger than an orange when they took it out. And she never fully recovered from that. So they stayed out there in Vegas, where she had to be treated regularly. She had to keep going back to the neurosurgeons, and he couldn't afford to do it anyplace else. So they had him captive there, where he couldn't go anyplace, and they had him under control. And in my own mind, I'm not so sure that wasn't induced just to keep him there and keep him out of circulation. He was a simulator engineer. Started out as a link trainer technician, and then as the science grew, he grew with it, going to schools as it evolved, until he became a simulator technician and builder out there, building the machines to teach pilots to fly airplanes that had never been flown before. We began to assemble our new airplanes at Lancaster and take them out to Area 51 for testing. So that Bill Uhouse was involved in that also, and in the simulator training of the pilots.
I did fly during World War II. When the Air Force got involved and they started developing the jets, then they built a jet simulator, which actually was the F-80, 86 and F-94, 102 and so forth and so on. But as these planes were being developed, the simulator was being developed right alongside of that, with the exact duplication, was an exact replica of the cockpit of that particular craft. Even the canopy, the windshields, anything else, the steps on the side, everything was the same. The electronics was very bulky, complicated, and took a lot of electrical devices to provide for the simulation of that particular craft. As a matter of fact, even TV back in the early 50s was just getting started, okay, as far as what they could use and how they could use it. Even at that time, they were able to program to the pilot that was being trained on the simulator before flying the particular craft, various different anomalies that he would experience with that particular aircraft. And even after the aircraft was in design or coming off design and going into its first production run, ready for its test flight, the changes were coming in. Of course, we'd have to change the simulator likewise. You know, the simulator would have to be the same. Even the electronics or the information that we got, instrumentation-wise, on the avionics of the craft, it had to be identical.
So S4 became a simulator facility mostly to train pilots to fly our new aircraft, our new generation aircraft.
When I was recruited, I can understand. I'm going to say one thing. I can understand why the young people today will not put up with the BS of going through security, classification, security, whether it's secret, top secret, whatever, or even say confidential or lowest levels of secrecy that some of these bases have, even for lowly truck drivers. It's some of it's humiliating. But it took about 4.5 to 5 years for me to get a particular level of clearance where they'd even put me on this particular project, and then I didn't know what it was. We didn't know. The fellows that I was with at the time, we had no idea what we were doing and exactly what we were going to build. But everything is compartmentalized. You have your mechanical design, your electrical, your instrumentation, and so forth. And if I had a question that that might have been related to instrumentation or some electrical portion or that type of thing, I'd have to go back through my boss, and he'd go back through the various different chains, and I'd get the information back. I brought up security clearances. 4.5, 5 years before I got a clearance. I got a brother that he said, "Where were you for 25 years?" You know, that kind of stuff. And, well, you know, I finally said, you know, I talked to him, you know, when I retired, which, you know, he was glad that I, you know, came out of my shell wherever I was, you know, and got back with the family again. But that's the way it goes. As a matter of fact, when I moved, now this is very degrading, okay? And what happens? They send in security people that go through every single item that you got that's being moved to wherever you're being relocated to. I happen to choose back here in Las Vegas. They went through books. They even looked at my skin to see if I had something written on my arms and stuff, and I didn't. The only thing they can't take away is what I got up here. That's the only thing. And I want to say again about the security. In this particular level of security for that particular, say, activity, and even some others, okay, it's a different type of security. You have permanent security officers that it's assigned to you. I know I had one for 20 years. 20 years, this guy, he was my security officer. You know, to monitor me, okay, to monitor me. There were several of these wreckages they picked up, okay, for example, you know, there was one at Roswell, there was Aztec, there were several others, one at Kingman. One at Kingman was more or less the one that came down at Kingman where there was some live bodies. That particular one, I know about the flight deck on that or the instrumentation that they brought in, but I was asked this question. "Hey, Bill, did you ever see one?" I said, "Yeah, I've seen them." He said, "Where?" I said, "Well, you know, back in New Mexico." What we were doing was taking that technology and transferring it into known technology for instruments that we are aware of, that our pilots could use or the people on Earth were familiar with. And yes, sure, they're flying discs around. We started back on those the simulators back in the 50s. You know, we're way ahead of the game. Some of them were built by us, and my position in that, or my work activity in that, was with simulators. A simulator that was parallel the actual craft that they were going to fly. I'd like to explain one thing. The alien crafts, there isn't anybody that could step into one. The best pilot in the world couldn't step in one to fly one. It's impossible. The avionics in a flying disc is so much different in respect to what you're looking at and the information that you get from it.
They were trying to bridge the gap between the alien technology and ours so we could learn to operate their ships. And they never succeeded in bridging the gap. They could never convert the alien controls to toggles and switches and buttons. And so in 30 years of trying, they never succeeded in it. We saw solutions, but we couldn't reach those solutions by their method because we didn't understand their technology. However, knowing that a solution exists, we found other ways to some of these solutions, like solid-state electronics and
laser technology and a number of things. The first thing they noticed is when they pulled the modules out of the panels, the modules continued to work. There's no wires, no lights or nothing. They could put them any place and they still operate. And then plug them back in and they function.
One of the first things that we were on were to join metal without nuts and bolts. That is, put two pieces of metal together without glue or nuts, bolts, and whatever. That was, the story was there, what we were going to do is make the aircraft lighter, right? No nuts, no bolts, no glue. That's it. I had a gentleman call me by the name of Bill Hamilton, and he talked to me on the phone. And he asked me a couple questions about some identifying numbers like IRC 16, IRC 10. And I didn't indicate to him that I was aware of what that meant. But he had said that he knows a Marine pilot that flies from here to the moon, okay, which is okay, that's fine. But I'd like to explain, I know about the 16, I know about the 10. And even the simulator was built in metric. Everything is metric, and it's meters. It's actually the 16 meters is 58.32 feet, and the 10 meters is about 29.47. So when they say a 30-foot disc, it's really not 30 foot. It's it's metric. Well, I can tell you that. That's no problem. But the dimensions on the craft are very, very critical. We finally did it after about 3 or 4 years of putting these two pieces of steel together. Of course, we had to go. There was curvatures and so forth and so on, and angles that we had to make to see if we could do it, with this material. And we finally did what we call, not 100% perfect, because we weren't in a. We needed really what you needed. It was a vacuum, and no dirt, no specks, no dust, nothing, none of that stuff. Well, it was years later, after we got through our training with the simulators and this particular portion of the project, before we found out exactly how this process was going to be used. And on the simulator, since it was a large, I'm going to go with the 29-footer, which it was. It was a large diameter. It had to be done in sections, and these sections had these adjoining L-type separations, and some were pi sections, some were hexagons, some were squares, and the equipment that we built was in these individual pods, so to speak. For example, the flight deck, the avionics, that was split up in about 3 different ones, but when they broke it all apart and shipped the unit, and they put it back together, it would all fit just like a jigsaw puzzle. It worked out well, real well. Like I said, all I did was the mechanical part of it. I knew nothing about the instrumentation on it. We were the mechanical design engineers for the avionics. That's for the flight deck. On this particular thing, there was the portions that I was involved in was the flight deck and equipment bay. The equipment bay being the bottom of the particular disc. If everybody here has seen Bob Lazar's poster, that's the closest thing you'll see until you see the real one of a flying disc, unless the government does something spectacular and opens something up down at Walt Disney to bring everybody through one of these things, the real actual thing. It'll look gray to you, and it'll be just barely visible. As soon as they power up, it's gone, and the ship's gone. But I'm going to quote Lazar, because I don't want. There's one thing I don't want to say. Whether or not they go into a time warp or not, that I don't understand. I can't handle. But I know that they go into some other mode of speed that I'm not familiar with. As far as going from, say, here to the moon and that type of thing. But like coming from where they come from, it takes several weeks. It just doesn't. They're just not here now. Okay. So that part it's hard for me to understand it either. Now you can see them, and the reason why you see them go so fast, and some are maybe you see it now and then you see it over there, It's because they power down so the ship's visible. You know, they're actually powered down the power of that ship. So now the ship's visible, so when they power back up and they reappear over there, that's what you're seeing, okay?
The alien project was a side project that very few people knew about. It was a highly classified side project. The habitat was apart from everything else in S4. They keep their ship there. They can come and go as they please. They're not detained.
But when they first introduced us to the Greys, it was sort of a long period of sessions that we went through. But finally they did. But it was only unlimited, you know, like 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever. And the other thing, if they speak to you, you're going to hear it in your own voice, so, you know.
The agreement, as I understood it, was that the aliens would give us some technology, help us with some technology. And they did this in the form of delivering one of their spacecraft with 2 operators, pilots. And before they delivered the spacecraft and the pilots, they laid a requirement on us, which I got this from the man that built it now, a requirement on us to build a proper habitat for their visitors, for them to live in. And so we did this out at Area 51, in the S4 area of Area 51, where Bill Uhouse, who I later made the acquaintance of, and he told me that when the agreement was reached and they got the specifications for the habitat, he was given part of the job. He was an engineer at Area 51, and he was on the team that was given the job of providing the habitat. He particularly worked on their sanitary facilities. He said the bathroom had 2 nozzles in the wall, one for water and one for an enzyme that the aliens brought from their home planet that was carried. It was held in a tank. It was evidently a living enzyme. It was held in a tank, and it was dispensed through a nozzle which they lathed over their skin, then rubbed it in and stood there for a few minutes until it cleaned their skin, whatever it was. And it might have nourished them too. And then after that interval, it was washed off with the shower nozzle, and everything was collected in the basin. The enzyme was filtered out and put back in the enzyme tank, and the water was flushed away. And so I said, well, what did they eat? He said that was another problem. He said they brought a culture from their home planet of primary order foods like fungi and spores and chlorophyll, and I don't know what was in it, but it was all simple foods that require less digestion. What we eat is complicated. It starts with the simple foods and gets more complex and more complex and more complex until the meat we eat is about 4 or 5 or 6 generations away from the primary source. And there are things that are added and things that are lost in the process. So our food is not very nutritious. Their food was supremely nutritious for them. And it took little to digest it because it's in lower forms already. And so we had to culture that and provide it to them as a diet and a proper eating facility. All these had to be built to make them comfortable. Sleeping, they had special sleeping requirements, and all this was built in to their little habitat facility out there in S4. And they when it was complete, they came in and inspected it and left the ship and 2 men and took 2 American scientists back to their home planet on a trade-off, reciprocal.
You know, I'm not the guy that believes that we have what you call these, you know, they look like a snake or they look like some weird reptilian type of individual. It's that's not exactly the way they look. Although you might get a little bit of flavor from this particular gentleman. They wore a shirt and a pair of pants. Their shoes were a little different, but and I just did this about 3 weeks ago. And I already sent it back to my friends and all. He says, yeah, no problem. This guy's name is J-Rod. Imagine that, J-A-R-O-D. That's a translation for whatever, they had given the translators at the facility that I worked at. There's a lot of linguists. There's so many people involved in this whole particular project.
Describe fully what this alien looked like?
Well, he had a disproportionately large head, disproportionately large oblique eyes, black. Very little nose, just two vertical slits for a nares, for a nose. The ears had no shell on the ears, they were just a slight bump and a membrane. The mouth was just a slit, a narrow, no fleshy lips. It was almost a lipless mouth. And the chin was kind of pointed. The neck was slender and weak looking. No hair at all. The skin was a different skin texture. It was more like the skin of a fine-skinned beaded lizard. And it seemed to be very flexible in all directions. There was no muscular activity in the face. The creature couldn't smile, couldn't grimace, couldn't laugh or anything like. Could open and close his mouth, but he only, his expression was all in his eyes when Bill could see him. Like around the table, the lenses were too dark to see anything. So he didn't manifest any expressions, like possibly motion of his hands or something of surprise.
Did Bill say what planetary system or solar system?
No,
or
he said that he had a feeling that he came from Reticulum, but the alien couldn't talk because he has no vocal cords. He has no opening in the back of his mouth at all. The mouth cavity only went back about 4.5 inches, and the mouth cavity was filled with many folds of tissue. And they took the alimentation into the mouth cavity, and a stiff, raspy tongue in the back of it moved it around among the tissue, and the nutrient was absorbed directly into the bloodstream through the tissues in the mouth, and the waste would just spit out like that. And the alimentation that was provided to the aliens at Area 51, Bill said, came in two forms. One was tablets that we made of their nourishment, was pressed into tablet form, and so they could carry it around in their pockets. And the other form was a paste that was put in a tube and squeezed in their mouth.
Yeah, it was confusing to me for many years, since I didn't know what the heck I was working on. But after a while, it became apparent, that what we were doing was a little bit different than what we normally do on this earth with our sciences. It was sciences from somewhere else. This J-Rod fella, he was a science translator. We had these big groups of people that were taking information, all these characters and symbols and so forth and so on. Gotcha. And he was assisting those people, but also he did some other things. Okay, although we didn't see him very often. Maybe I saw this gentleman maybe about once in a year that he'd come in. Now whether it was him, I don't know, but looked the same to me. I didn't say, "Hey, J-Rod, how are you?" There was none of that stuff.
So Bill Uhouse spent 20-some years trying to bridge the gap, and he often would find himself working under the instrumentation consoles of theirs or ours in a darkened condition where he could see an iris and a pupil behind that black onyx-looking eye in bright daylight. So whatever that was in the eye, it was light sensitive, and in dim light it became more transparent. In full sunlight it was black as onyx, solid opaque black.
And what did he describe the eye under this shield to look like?
It had an iris a little bit bigger than ours and a bigger pupil. It was probably one reason why they had to use the shield. They had more sensitive eyes.
And the shape of the pupil and the eye?
It's round, just like ours.
And the pupil as well?
Yeah. And he said that that in 1968, a progress review conference was called at Los Alamos with Edward Teller heading the table, and they took him and his...
The one who eventually hired Bob Lazar.
Yeah. And they took Bill Uhouse and his counterpart, the alien counterpart that he was working with regularly, to Los Alamos to sit around the big oval table with 18 participants to discuss the failure in making any progress in the technology assistance we were supposed to be getting. We haven't learned a damn thing. And they took the alien there with Bill Uhouse. They put him in a white shirt and slacks to make him look less alien, but his proportionately large head and proportionately large black eyes with no hair and everything stood out starkly in contrast to all the other participants around the table. So Bill Uhouse, most engineers are pretty good sketch artists. Bill Uhouse, while he's sitting there, as things were moving along, he's doodling on his pad and he sketched a portrait of J-Rod, is what they called him out there. And even after a while, they began calling Bill Uhouse J-Rod too, because he was spending so much time with the alien.
What did Bill talk to you about the possibility of disease, non-terrestrial diseases that might have been?
He said that we didn't understand all of the physiology of the aliens. The alien couldn't talk, but the alien was telepathic, and he tried to communicate with Bill enough so that Bill finally learned to pick some of it up. So what he couldn't pick up telepathically, the alien could make symbols and motions with his hands and sketch, like trying to, if he's thinking about making a connection from here to here for such and such reason, he could communicate the idea, but he couldn't write it down, he couldn't articulate it. And Bill eventually got to where he could understand the guy pretty well, and that's why he was at the conference with the alien, is to interpret for the alien and tell him what the alien was thinking or saying.
So let's get back to that conference now then. You've got the 18 people sitting around there at the table. And what happens?
Well, I wasn't at the conference, I don't know.
What did Bill say?
He said that the conference lasted about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and the various departments made their reports on their attempts to solve some of the technological problems that they that were involved in understanding the spacecraft, and each department made their report on their failure to accomplish this or accomplish that, and the reasons for it, to Teller, to head the table. And when they adjourned, they agreed that they hadn't made a great deal of progress and may not make a lot of progress.
And the reason why Lazar got out there so fast was because of Teller. All Teller had to do was write that letter and sign it, and, you know, it was like putting the frosting on the cake. He didn't have to go through all the BS, although he had to go through some. And I'm sure they were investigating him while they put this Gestapo guys on his butt. And that's like it is. That's how I really knew nothing about what was going on the outside of what, except what I was doing at work. And until I started to build here and came back to Las Vegas, I met a fella. His name was Gene Huff. As a matter of fact, he knew Bob Lazar. He did the appraisals on my house. He had mentioned UFOs, so forth and so on. And of course, I couldn't say anything. I didn't say anything. And I said, that's interesting. I said, where's all this information at? So he gave me some information. I bought some books and started reading it and so forth and so on. That was way back in the, say, 1989. And then, of course, Bob Lazar, he had come on TV, and I'd watched that program, and I said, boy, stuff is leaking out fast. Everybody talks about the government's not going to do this, the government's not going to do that. Well, let me tell you guys something. That's the government you know. There are little countries in this country. You got one not so far from here. It's part of Area 51, but a portion of that facility is a separate country. It's run by certain individuals. They've got their own rules, their own laws. That's why anybody that goes out there to work, and I certainly know some people have, and I've been out there many times. I've been in some of the tunnels, and probably some of you people here have been there, but you know how they handle the buses and so forth and so on, and the security, whether you go in the Tonopah Gate or if you're going out to say into the center part of Area 51 where the facilities are. But New Mexico has their own little country, and that is not the government. That's a separate entity in its own. There's one also in, from what I understand, I'm not told, I'm just telling you what I know. The reason why I'm saying that is because For example, there was a question asked me about Senator Bill Bray. I think he's a senator, congressman. You know, well, he's got security clearance, and he went out there and he looked, and, you know, there's nothing out there. Well, Senator Bill Bray doesn't have the clearance, or Congressman Bill Bray, I think that's what it is. And there are certain levels of clearances that you'd have to go through for certain aspects of that particular work going on. Whether it's the flying disc or other things that they're doing, you're not going to get into any of these facilities. Now, these little satellite countries in here in the United States, they have nothing to do with the government. As a matter of fact, if anybody read the paper this morning, you'll find out that this suit that's against Area 51 for burning toxic waste, they wanted to set it up so it would be held in Washington, D.C., and of course the justices there said no, they won't take it, and it's transferred back here to Las Vegas. They won't even handle it. Impossible. They just can't do it. So, and I'm sure Wendell knows about some of this stuff. He's probably been involved, and a few other people here that I know or have met are very familiar with the way certain parts of this U.S. government interact with these particular areas. There are certain people up there in D.C., I'm sure, that are aware of everything that's going on, and there's a wall that's put up between that group and the groups that are at these satellite facilities. And I mentioned Teller's name before, and he's probably one of them. But they have their own organization that's controlling all of this, and they have it's their own government. It's Gestapo, really. It's Gestapo. And these guys are tough. Everything, and until all the information is going to come out, which is going to take many years before it does, you're going to keep getting trickle. And maybe one day, if we're still alive, we'll get, we'll try and maybe we'll understand everything as our little satellite governments know it here in the United States.
The aliens are still there, by the way.
In S4.
One of them is ill. Yeah, they're still here. We rotated our scientists. We wanted them to bring our exchange scientists back in 2 years, which they did, and we sent 2 more. And I think we rotated them every 2 years. So we must have a dozen or more scientists that had been to that home planet for a year or more and come back.
Now also down in level 2 there are 7 gray bodies. Little humanoid type creatures. We're in a solution. I would say max 3.5, maybe almost 4 feet max. Oh, they're absolutely identical. I've never had a chance to sit and observe them for more than maybe a minute, but I couldn't see no individual identification on any of them. I mean, no different lines on their face or anything of that sort.
You said a little earlier that they called this place the museum. You got any idea why they called it that?
Yes, I think it's because, we all referred to it as a museum because I think that all of this stuff has basically been analyzed before.
He saw 2 alien bodies pickled in a liquid and preserved standing erect in a large transparent tube-like case. He said there were more, but he could only see the front 2 nearest the patrol area where they walked. He could see the others, but they were obscured by the front 2 tanks. A metal band around the waist held the bodies erect. Otherwise, they were naked. The eyes in one of them seemed to be sunken back some, indicating that it had been there for some time.
Now, over on this, there's a hallway down here that breaks off, which is there's a big computer system right here. I believe it's a computer system. I'm not going to say for sure. Right here is a level. There's 7 tubes. These tubes are about 2 feet in width. They're about 6 feet in height.
They stand on end?
They stand on end on end. Now, as you walk in and you look at these tubes, ago, pretty sure one. They're all exactly the same, and the creatures inside are completely identical. There's absolutely no way that I can see of identifying each and every one of them individually. Now there's an aluminum part right here. I don't know if it's covering genitals of them or not, but the rest is filled with the solution. There's a couple tanks right here. I don't know if they're oxygen. I don't know what they hold. There's no identifying marks on them whatsoever. There's absolutely no air in the tanks. It's all solution. And the grays are just in here, right here. They're suspended, so I imagine they're being clamped somehow, some way to hold them in this where their feet is completely off the ground and stuff like that. And under here, there's about a 1 foot pedestal of black iron steel. Like it's polished, but it looks like a black polished anodized iron. Now the things inside, I mean, resemble what everybody sees, and the only thing that's different about them from what I see on all the pictures is the eyes appear to be have deteriorated, or they look like prunes. They're like your fingers get pruned. They're all shriveled up, and you can't see no eye sockets, and there's no visible eyelids or anything like that. They have a grayish, like a grayish pigmentation. It's not scaly or anything. It's like a pigmentation. There's no apparent hair on them. There's little holes, not really slits, but a little hole, maybe an ear cartilage. I don't know. Maybe you're hearing slits are really kind of small for the nose and the mouth. The bodies themselves are very, very thin. They appear not to have any breast or navel or anything like that. Not that I can see.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to sit and study them in full view for a while. I don't think I have heard talk there that I know their systems aren't like ours. But they're very thin and they look very, very frail.
Did you notice the hands?
The hands got a little bit of webbing. Minute, very minute. There's 4 finger-like things, and they're very, very minute piece of webbing. There appears to be no fingernails. As I say, I couldn't look in detail because the hands are turned like this. They're just like a full view, so I really can't see. You can see where there is one joint in each finger, it looks like. Where like ours has 2 joints, I think they only got 1. I'm not sure. You can just see the crease in where they only got 1. And 1 acts as a thumb like what we do. The feet are not in view. The pedestal from before covers the feet completely, so
Didn't get a look at that.
I didn't get a look at them. And they are all completely identical.
This is his sketch of the tank that the cadavers were suspended in. And he mentioned that this was some kind of a regulatory panel that controlled the temperature and the solution in the tank. This is his sketch, rough sketch, of the alien figure in one of the tanks of liquid. And he said it's not a very accurate sketch, but it's the best he could do.
One of our colleagues there, the rest of the people there are sentries. That there are 4 people there that believe that are working to try to get this on here. And one of them is a biologist, which I guess he's personally performed the autopsies. I can say for sure, but we have those reports, so we can, when we receive them, we go over them in detail and see what you think.
Have you taken a look at the autopsy report yourself?
Yes.
Can you describe some of the anatomy of the...
I don't know too much about biology and the anatomy. I'm not a pathologist, but I didn't go into detail in reading it. I'm going to be honest, I didn't read it. All I did is look at the pictures of one of the autopsies. And they had the extraterrestrial little gray, opened up. They did what they call a scalp, and they cut the top of his scalp off, and we're looking in there. I know there's brain weight, they weighed everything, and the organs are in a little bit similar to what a human Homo sapien anatomy is.
So they had an epidermis, they had eyes, they had a mouth, throat, a brain.
Yes, and they have a small Adam's apple. Because you can see that through the what they're kept in. Now the autopsies are performed in level 3, I believe. As I say again, I didn't go into detail in reading the autopsies. I'm just going to leave that to someone else because I really don't understand a lot of the words. I'm a grown. I know they have some kind of a pump system that pumps some kind of a chemical blood, I guess you would say. I know I've heard it mentioned that their eyes are, because of the gravitational pull, they're in no gravitation, so their eyes tend to go up in there something like that. I mean, that's about all.
What scientists did Connor O'Ryan mention by name who were involved?
He didn't give us the names of them. He said that the biologist that had charge of the cadavers in the glass cylinders was one of the defectors, one of his co-defectors that were disappointed by the what they thought was unnecessary secrecy, because they thought that they were guarding museum material, and why did it have to be so secret, and it's tying up their lives so seriously they didn't have any liberty or they had no freedoms.
What did Connor O'Ryan say the biologist's position and information was?
He said he just took care of the bodies in the containers, regulated the temperature, regulated the chemical balance in the solution. He escorted people that were brought in to view the bodies and described what they knew about the bodies. He kept the records on them. They only met him when they were both out of the facility. They weren't allowed to talk to anybody in the facility except in front of the TV set or eating lunch at the table. And they had to address each other by number. They couldn't use names. And the numbers were on their tab on their suit. The biologist had a number tab also. They never knew his name. They weren't allowed to give each other their names. So when the Marines were out, they did exchange names. He knew some of the other Marines who they were.
Did Bill Uhouse's testimony coincide with that of what Connor O'Ryan said the biologist within S4 was saying? Did any of that information corroborate each other?
No, because Bill Uhouse said that the 2 alien beings that he helped build the habitat for they weren't detained, they weren't caged, they weren't restricted, they could move about. They chose not to move about a whole lot because we were as different from them as they were from us. They didn't really like us. Their facility was a specially constructed facility apart from all the others that we've discovered. Not a part of Groom Lake. It was in Papoose Lake in the S4 facility, but another part from where the craft were stored. After Connor rested up and got some, we took him to the restaurant and had something to eat, came back. he told me what he was there for. He said that he had been become disenchanted with the security there. And he, on their R&R, he discovered, when they could talk, he discovered that there was some other security guards that were equally disenchanted and didn't think that thought the security was overplayed and that they didn't like living that way under the security conditions they were living under. And they thought they ought to make a record of it in case something happened. They knew they'd been in, all of it were Special Forces troops. They had been in military security long enough to know that it's dangerous to break the rules. But they really wanted up. They weren't allowed to transfer. They knew too much.
There are some colleagues there that believe that it should be brought out into the open, and that's what we're doing right now. We want to do it slowly and surely, and but I don't want to mention no names.
No names there. I was just wondering about.
Ever. I know who they are because I spent my leave with them, and we discussed it in detail, how it should be done, and who we should contact in this situation.
On their rest and recuperation, they could talk where they couldn't talk in the facility. And they talked a lot. Yeah, they found out that the biologist was disenchanted too and approached him. And when they asked him what he could do for the project, to safeguard themselves by stashing information that could be released if anything happened to them, because they're all thinking they're vulnerable because of what they know and what they're doing. And he agreed to furnish documents and papers from his files when the time came to let some of it out.
Did any of that information get out with the 52 photos?
There was a statement on paper by the biologist along with some photos of the bodies in the tanks.
I would buy books. I bought a lot of books. Not a lot, but I'd send them home to my mom. I'd read them. When I was on leave, I'd go to the libraries and read what I could. I read Light Years at the library. I mean, I didn't really do too much when you're on leave because, I mean, you just, after a while it became kind of an obsession to find out what I'm really dealing with here because I kind of almost feared for my own safety. I mean, I don't want to walk away with some incredible, crazy-ass disease or anything like that, you know, I mean, plutonium poisoning. I've been discharged now for almost 7 weeks. I met them in Vegas. I met 2 of them in Vegas 3 weeks ago. And we discussed MUFON. And I did a little bit of calling and stuff, and we came to conclude that MUFON is an organization with way, way too many leaks. We thought it best to go with the private person that is not going to get greedy and ignorant and sit on the information until we can get it all out. We feel that a big organization like Center for UFO Studies and any nation abroad won't sit on it like we want them to. We need it to be sit on. I mean, we need it to be hidden away and sit on.
So what you guys are basically looking for us to do is to gather the information
and store it.
Think of more that we need so that we can put it together into a good, logical, solid format, and then eventually
a documentary, or would it be to bring out and basically to show it up to governments, you know, and to make them. Naturally, they're never going to admit it, right? But the other 4 people that are still currently working there will be willing to come and testify when the time comes. But they have to be ensured that they're going to be safe, because they do have families, and you know, we don't want to destroy their family structure or ruin their credibility. Like what had happened if we went to a big organization, it would be destroyed within hours. I mean,
have you ever been
I called MUFON. I did call MUFON. I didn't destroy myself. I just asked them what their procedure was for investigating government secrets, and they gave me some big old line of, and I just hung up on them. They don't. And we knew about Mr. Stevens here, and we know he's been in trouble before and on trumped up stuff, and we just decided that he'd be the best private person to investigate this for us and document it the best they can be documented.
He said we went to the library looking for somebody to approach and for this purpose, and we rejected all of the names available to us down to yours. You didn't seem to be a member affiliated with any UFO organization. You were familiar with the APRO people, but you weren't an APRO member. You didn't. You seemed to be working alone, and less chance of you being infiltrated. So we decided to come to you with the pictures.
This could all be published on a signal to raise the profile of the group in case any of them were harmed. They hoped that a public outcry would result, and this would leave this would save some of them from internal executions. Such an outcry could lead to lawsuits against the government, subpoenas of evidence, and finally bringing down the house of cards of security over those important matters affecting us all, our society, and our world. That was probably pipe dreaming, because they're too secure for that to happen.
In terms of the guards conspiring together, did they do all of that on leave?
They could only communicate on leave.
And did Connor say...
Everything inside the facility was monitored and recorded.
Did Connor say how he was going to stay in contact once he was out and over here?
Through the one guy's girlfriend that he was seeing every week, every R&R into Vegas, his girlfriend would come see him.
Do you think they already figured out who she was? And
I'm sure they did, because when she lost contact, she was sure that her boyfriend had been picked up. If he was picked up, they would be aware of the others.
They met each other and contrived to bring in a small camera, which was successfully taken into the facility. It was a little Instamatic 112, narrow type, small type, just fits the cassette that you can secret in your clothes. They came to know which of the security guards were more lax than other guards. They weren't all the same. So they had, when they were out on R&R, had conspired to bring in one of those little tiny Instamatic 110 cameras that just fits the reel of film, and they watched the guards. They knew which guards, screening guards, when they came back through, were lax and which were strict, and they were calculating their schedules, and they started calculating the shift to figure out which guard might be on when they came back in, and they got the camera in on one of those calculated risks where the guards stripped it, searched them, everything, but didn't go through the pockets. And they got through okay with it. He didn't. They got it in, and they got it. It was on a package of film, and they got later they got a second package of film. But they used that and began to take pictures covertly at their level. And he said the thing that sparked my interest. He said that there were there were hangar bays, small hangar bays at level 2, and there were craft in 7 of them. And he said that they had taken pictures of all the 7 craft, and that they took a picture of Dick Cheney standing in front of one with one of the lab people from above looking at it. He said, they want to say he wasn't there, we got proof. And I thought
Secretary of Defense at the time.
He was Secretary of Defense at the time, Dick Cheney was, yeah. And he's in there looking at one of the craft in level 2.
Were you able to recognize any public figures that ever came through there of any kind?
Yes, I did. Would you like me to mention?
Yeah, let's mention that.
Okay, 3 of them we haven't identified yet, but I believe that they are high CIA from the science department. One of them I've seen his picture before. I've looked for it in libraries, but I haven't placed it yet. One more key figure was the Secretary of Defense, Dick Cheney. He was there about 6 months ago. He was observing with I guess you could say it was a fact-finding type thing. They were walking around, just looking around. I didn't identify the other 3 people with them.
Okay, this is about the time we were beginning to schedule a cutback in military force structure, right?
I believe so, yes.
And they were going to close.
That's when they're starting to close the bases and stuff. That's around the talk of that right there. This base has been here for a long time. Mr. Cheney, his reason being there, I have no idea. I can only begin to theorize on why he was there. He was, I assume, wondering what's going on. I mean, being the Secretary of Defense and the unique quality of these things, I'm sure they're thinking some kind of weapons they can use or whatever. There, I don't know. I didn't have a privy to any information. They would have to go through 3 gates. Once you get onto the thing, once they got through those 3 gates, which I've never been a sentry to those gates. If you were on the facility, you were all right, as long as you weren't putting in. We were just standing there, I guess, for an invasion, possibly, or to make sure saboteurs. We had orders to shoot, to kill if anything looked suspicious. Anything.
Was Cheney escorted by anybody?
He was escorted by three. Yes, he was in 3 individuals, which I don't know who they were with Cheney. There was 2 people from the facility that were there that walked with him through the complex. He went to level 2, level 1. He did not go to level 3 and 4.
He only went to levels 1 and 2.
Because I was in level 2 at the time during his visit. I was by elevator door number 3. And I watched him go in, and he went into the back building, and we were called up to go guard it into the front of the hangar area as we went up there. So I was relieved for elevator door number 3, and I went over there.
So he visited levels 1 and 2, so he was able to see the spacecraft in level 2
yes.
and the bodies in the cylinders.
Absolutely, without discussion, he's seen the spacecraft. Without discussion. He's seen the bodies too, the 7 little gray people. Now, I mean, just like I said before, I'm on the run and I know my time's limited, so...
Well, it sounds like you and your colleagues have thought this out a little bit. What is your best goal for getting this out in the open? Did you guys want to put it together into a movie form?
No, we don't. I mean, it's not, we don't want no money. We don't want no publicity because these guys have families. I don't. What happens to me is irrelevant, and I have always been an expendable being, what I've always done in my life. So but these guys they want to remain anonymous until the time comes. But they don't want no stardom. We don't want no movies. We don't want books. We just want the American public to know that what is really happening behind closed doors. I mean, the government is massively deceiving people, and many lives are being destroyed because of their debunking processes. There's safe to say that there's probably many people in prison that have tried to do this before. So we want to take it safe and slow. That's why I have contacted you. I mean, I'm just the first leg of hopefully something massive that we can bring this on the open someday. It was very irregular of a military base. We weren't allowed to go into the parking lot area and look at license plate cars. We weren't allowed to. I think that's why they give you a polygraph to see if you memorize any of the license plates of any cars or anything like that. I mean, you're not allowed to keep any notepads whatsoever. The only time you're allowed to write letters or anything is when you're on your own leave. Then you go through a polygraph right when you get there. So if you made any mental notes, they're going to know about it. When we would meet and talk when we were on leave, it was like sometimes they would ask you questions and sometimes not. We took a big chance a couple times, talking about it. Because sometimes they would ask you a couple questions and you'd be out. And like, did you talk? Did you call anybody? No. All right, go. Sometimes they'd ask you 3 questions. Sometimes they'd barrage you with 30 if they suspected anything.
And all of them had been subjected to hypnotic control. They had different controls, but their controllers knew that either a tone, a flash of light, a touch on a certain part of the body would put them in an altered state of consciousness, and then they could be controlled, instructed,
Or interrogated.
or interrogated.
We go in a room, they would hook us up to an IV, and that's basically, then you wake up about 50 minutes later and the physical is over. Counting, you know, they tell you to count to 10, make it to about 7, and that'd be it. You wake up with a tremendous headache. We were told that if we breached any kind of security system, then you'd be terminated. I mean, if you were on the facility and you breached the system, you'd be terminated. Period. They've already done 9 years in covert operations with the SEAL team, so I think they pretty much trusted me in that concept to keep my mouth shut, which I would have. I mean, I don't want to be the one for ringing the bells, but this goes way beyond covert operations and stuff.
This became a dangerous game, and its possible discovery during one of the hypnotic sessions may have been the real reason for his sudden disease and separation.
Now I found out, I mean, my last physical, they told me I've contracted a form of Hodgkin's disease, which is a cancer of the blood. To be perfectly honest, I don't know what the truth is or not.
On the last quarterly physical for our guest, it was reported he had Hodgkin's disease in an advanced state, and he would die in a few weeks. Now, this young man was as healthy as anybody. He was strong. He was 29 years old. He worked out. He had good muscular body. He felt nothing, no discomforts of any kind, felt no dis-ease. So if it was administered, a particularly virulent form was administered, and we know that the cancers that are administered by these same agencies to execute people are always in a particularly virulent form and move fast. He may have been given this disease by his own superiors to terminate him for what he now knew.
I had to sign numerous National Security Act papers, polygraph examination, 2 polygraph examinations. I don't know if they hypnotized us or not. Somebody told me that they would, but I never remember being hypnotized, so I could not reveal and say I was or I wasn't. We were told I was never ever to speak about this again. That I could go back into they were going to put me back into the regular Navy. I could turn my time out, but I told them I didn't want to do that because I've always been in the SEAL team. So they promised me that I would be taken care of medically. But I had talked to my other colleagues there at the facility, and we decided that since I'm in this kind of a situation, that I just personally decided that we're going to try to bring it out in the open slowly and surely.
He was very worried because he was still in perfect health and had no history of such disease in his family. He came to me in a vengeful state. He had saved quite a bit of money, and he wanted to go to retirement and live the good life. And now suddenly he's told that that's gone. He's not going to be around very long. So his revenge was sincere. I felt at that time that he really was, and if it was a play, he was a good actor. His retaliation, if this turned out to be true, was to release 52 photographs taken inside of level 2 of S4, successfully brought out to blow the lid off such a nefarious operation. This was truly the work of mad scientists, if valid.